Hello my friends. Today I want to talk about one of my more favorite topics to cover, and that is how to make your colors pop. I love talking about colors in general because it's just so fun to experiment with and try out new colors. But in this particular painting, even though I used a very simple color palette and theme, I love how the colors turned out, and I think they pop and bring a lot of emotion to the painting. So I want to share my 5 tips on how you can also use colors to make your paintings pop and be memorable in the viewer's mind. If you enjoy this type of video, feel free to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. I have been posting a lot more in the past couple of months, and I'd love to have you stick around on the channel. I post both digital and traditional art, and I love to share about my art journey with you. My very first tip is, when starting off with your sketch and choosing the colors, to think of a main feeling for your piece. This is so important to actually set the mood for what this painting will become and to have it visualized in your mind's eye. The reason you'd like to choose a main feeling is because there are colors that you can associate with those feelings. So for example, in this painting, I wanted a calm, vintagey, retro-y, dreamy look. And the way that I achieved it was with some muted, natural, and warm tones, like kind of a warmy green taupe, the warmth in her hair, and the warm red in her lips and her cheeks. I could very easily have made this whole painting a lot more moody with very dark jewel tones for the background and a little bit more dramatic lighting, but I think that using a greeny khaki color for the background, as well as some brighter and more muted yellows, as well as this kind of auburny hair color, I think all of this works together for a cohesive, dreamy, vintage look for my painting. My second tip is to use 1 or 2 colors as your accents for the piece. In general, you want your colors to be cohesive. You'd like some more saturated or darker colors. You'd like some brighter or maybe more muted colors. But in general, you probably don't want a lot of pops of color. However, I think 1 or 2 pops, in this case the matte red of the lips or even the blue toned cool highlights, they contrast each other extremely well. So for something soft and dreamy, you might not expect to have bright pops of color or contrast, but these help to tell a story and to create a memorable visual look for your painting. Especially the blues in this image are unexpected in this otherwise soft, vintage, and warm palette, and that's why a pop is successful, a pop of color. My third tip, which kind of ties into the second, is if the image looks cohesive, albeit a bit boring, add a small pastel or neon pop of color to bring something new to the image. In this case, the blue highlights on the face and the cyan stars break up the image with some interest. I add these right at the end of the painting as I step back and analyze what I wanted to add as the final touches, and I often do this especially with anything that is a smaller detail. I like to wait right until the end so I can render the rest of the painting holistically, not focusing on the smaller details. However, I find that adding these highlights on the face and the cyan stars breaks the image up a bit and adds some interest. Again, you're not expecting to see these cool blues in this painting, especially since it's so warm, but I think because they stand out, they draw a lot of attention to the face. My fourth tip is contrast will help your image pop, obviously, but in this case, the eyes are dark, but the bright, sharp highlights in the eyes draw attention to them. This is a very simple way to add contrast to your face, so if you're painting fairer features, painting darker eyes, and if you're painting dark skin, adding brightness to the eye color, this works well as a concept, and if you're not painting anybody in particular, but I understand that there are limitations when it comes to your OC's design or capturing likeness based on your reference photos. It's not like this tip is going to work across the board depending on what you're painting, but it's good to note that the contrast in the face brings so much attention to the eyes because they are dark against her pale skin. The contrast in the pink of the cheeks and the red of the lips also draws attention to her face against her very bright and fair skin. Lastly, I chose to give her a kind of a dark, warm hair color that sweeps across her face that also draws attention to her face because there is contrast between the very dark hair and her brighter face. I love the way that I painted the hair in this painting, and I think it frames the face and her body really well. But if I wanted to drive home this point even more and maybe have her look a little bit like a floating head, I could have made her dress dark as well so that the center of her face pops even more. But I think that the color of the dress and the detail brings some energy to the piece and looks effective. I'm speeding through this right now. I have a couple of other videos on color if you'd like to check those out, or you can comment down below and ask very specific questions if you'd like me to talk about color more in the future. But on to my very last tip, which is very generally use cool tones for the shadows and warm for the highlights. You might be wondering, why did I add blue to the face's highlights if I said cool tones for the shadows, warm for the highlights? The reason for this is that the subject is backlit, so effectively the figure is silhouetted with warm light, but her face and body are in majority shadowed. Because I'd like to create this visual contrast, especially when it comes to the colors, I added very warm reds and yellows and oranges to the rim lighting so that you can tell she's being backlit by something warm like a sunset. And I used generally cooler tones for her face and her clothing. A lot of the time as I'm painting details, I might not be focusing on these minute differences in color as I am painting the actual details, but once I have the details generally added to the painting, I like to go in with overlay or soft light layers to continue driving home the point that she is in shadow. This doesn't all have to be super realistic, but I like the blue highlights in her face because it almost feels like there's blue light reflecting and bouncing off of her face, which again drives home the point that her face is kind of in the shadows while the back of her is in the sunlight. I love the way that this painting came out. I think it's really simple but effective, and I absolutely love how I rendered her hair and sort of the background. I think it's really sweet. If you feel that the detail in your painting looks really nice, but you're not super satisfied with the color palette, that's definitely where the curves and overlay layers come in. I always tweak the colors of my painting right at the very end, and I love to add some soft glows and highlights to bring a bit of cohesion to the end painting, as well as maybe a little bit more of a dreamy look. I just love anything that's glowy and kind of cute and magical. If you feel like your painting looks a little bit one note when it comes to the colors, feel free to use overlay and soft light layers to just add a couple of pops of colors like brighter pinks or purples, blues, or greens to bring a little bit of something exciting to your painting. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more content and more videos. Feel free to follow me on Instagram and on TikTok if you'd like to see what I'm getting up to day to day. But in the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Bye.